By the time the three artificial suns rose above the Capitol dome, the grand arena of Lethera was already trembling with noise. Hundreds of thousands of spectators filled its ascending rings, while millions more watched through orbiting hollow satellites that projected the tournament across the empire. Beneath the transparent floor, magnetic engines pulsed like the heartbeat of some enormous machine, adjusting gravity for each species gathered there. Queen Serelya sat high above the arena on a silver throne surrounded by floating screens, diplomatic drones, and advisors who had been arguing since dawn about seating arrangements. She ignored them all. Her attention remained fixed on the woman standing in the center of the combat platform. Commander Varessa wore dark ceremonial armor that curved smoothly across her body, its surface alive with faint lines of blue energy. She looked almost human, except for her pale silver-blue skin and the elegant ears that extended far beyond her braided black hair. She had defeated generals from 12 worlds, survived a duel inside a collapsing moon station, and once disarmed a 6-armed Carian before the creature had finished introducing itself. Today, however, she looked bored. "I need someone to loosen my muscles," she announced, her voice amplified across the arena. "The finals begin in 20 minutes, and standing still is damaging my reputation." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Queen Serelya leaned toward her military advisor. "Find her someone harmless," she said, "preferably someone with good medical insurance." The advisor nervously searched the personnel display. On the lower platform, soldiers stood in neat lines, hoping desperately not to be noticed. Varessa studied them with the casual interest of a person choosing fruit at a market. Then she pointed. That one. Every head turned toward a human wearing a plain gray uniform and holding a crate of replacement power cells. Daniel Hale froze with one foot halfway onto a service ramp. He looked behind himself, clearly hoping there was another unremarkable human soldier standing nearby. There was not. "Me?" he asked. "Yes, you," Varessa replied. "You appear reasonably durable." Daniel glanced down at the crate in his hands. "I'm actually from logistics. Even better, if you lose quickly, you can return to delivering batteries." The audience laughed again. Daniel sighed and handed the crate to a nearby technician, who immediately stepped backward as if accepting possession of his final belongings. 2 security drones escorted Daniel onto the platform. He moved without hurry, his expression calm but faintly annoyed, like a man who had been interrupted during lunch. Queen Serelya studied him more carefully. He was not physically impressive by imperial standards. He had no combat implants, no visible energy shield, and no ceremonial scars. His file hovered beside her throne, displaying routine assignments, average test scores, and 1 disciplinary note for repairing a damaged coffee machine with unauthorized Starship components. "That machine produced excellent coffee," Serelya murmured. Varessa rolled her shoulders as the arena's gravity adjusted to human levels. "Do not worry," she told Daniel. "I promise not to break too many bones." Daniel looked at the tournament clock. "Could you break them efficiently? I'm supposed to inventory plasma cells before noon." Even Varessa smiled at that. The combat barrier rose around them, shimmering into place with a low electric hum. Daniel removed his jacket, folded it carefully, and placed it near the edge of the platform. That small act drew another wave of laughter. Varessa stood nearly a head taller than him, her armored boots anchored to the floor by magnetic stabilizers. She lifted her hands and entered the opening stance that had terrified warriors across the galaxy. Daniel simply stood there. "You may attack first," she said. "That seems rude," he replied. "I selected you for combat." Yes, that was the rude part. Queen Serelya covered her mouth to hide a laugh. The signal tone sounded. Varessa moved instantly. Her first step shattered the thin layer of dust across the platform, and her armored fist cut through the air with enough force to trigger the arena's impact alarms. Daniel shifted half a step sideways. His hand touched her wrist, his shoulder turned, and Varessa's attack passed him as if she had aimed at empty space. Before she could recover, Daniel hooked one foot behind hers, pressed two fingers against a nerve cluster below her elbow, and used her own momentum to twist her downward. Varessa struck the floor on one knee. The audience went silent. She rose with a snarl and attacked again, faster this time, combining 3 strikes with a spinning kick that had once broken the jaw of a machine designed without a jaw. Daniel avoided every blow by movements so small they seemed accidental. Then he stepped inside her guard, tapped the side of her neck, turned her arm, and swept both legs from beneath her. Varessa hit the platform flat on her back. Her armor locked automatically. Daniel knelt beside her, one hand resting lightly against the emergency release at her throat. The tournament clock displayed 47 seconds. No one cheered. No one breathed. Daniel looked toward the Queen. "Does this mean I can go back to work?" For several long seconds, the arena remained so quiet that Daniel could hear the faint ticking of Varessa's cooling armor beneath his hand. Then the sound returned all at once. Hundreds of thousands of voices rose in confusion, disbelief, and outrage, shaking the transparent walls of the stadium, while commentary drones spun wildly above the platform, trying to decide whether they had witnessed a historic victory or a catastrophic equipment failure. Daniel released Varessa's arm and stepped back. Her armor unlocked with a sharp hiss, allowing her to sit upright. She did not look angry. That frightened the royal guards far more than anger would have. Varessa stared at Daniel as though he had suddenly revealed a second head. "Do that again," she said. Daniel glanced toward the exit. "I would rather not. The batteries are still waiting. You defeated me." "Yes, it seemed safer than letting you hit me." The crowd's noise faded into uneasy murmurs as Queen Serelya rose from her throne. With one gesture, she silenced the arena's amplifiers. "The warm-up match is concluded," she announced. "Apparently, Commander Varessa is now extremely warm." Laughter broke through the tension, though Varessa did not take her eyes from Daniel. The tournament officials rushed onto the platform carrying scanners, medical instruments, and expressions normally seen on people approaching an unexploded bomb. One physician examined Varessa's neck, while another scanned Daniel for illegal implants. The scanner passed over his body twice, then emitted a confused beep. "No combat augmentations," the physician said. "No neural accelerator, no reinforced skeleton, no predictive battle implant." Daniel nodded. "I do have a dental filling." "That is not relevant. It becomes relevant in cold weather." Varessa rose slowly, ignoring the physician's protests. Her pride had been struck harder than her body, yet beneath the humiliation, something sharper had awakened. Curiosity. She replayed the encounter in her mind, searching for the moment she had lost control. There was no moment. Each attack had simply become a path Daniel had already understood. "Who trained you?" she asked. Daniel picked up his folded jacket. "An old man." "What old man?" "A very old one." "Name?" "Elias Ward." The name meant nothing to her, but the Royal Archive system reacted immediately. A red warning symbol appeared above Queen Serelya's private console, then vanished before anyone else noticed. Serelya's expression changed only slightly. "Bring the human to the observation chamber," she ordered. "Commander Varessa, the finals are delayed." A tournament official nearly fainted. "Your Majesty, 12 planetary broadcasts are synchronized to the event. Then they may all enjoy 12 planetary advertisements." Within minutes, Daniel found himself seated in a circular room beneath the arena while military analysts surrounded him with holographic recordings of the fight. Every movement had been slowed, enlarged, and reconstructed by predictive combat software. The central AI displayed thousands of possible outcomes, nearly all ending with Daniel unconscious. The one real outcome blinked in yellow, labeled statistically improbable. "The system says your victory had a probability of 0.003%. said Chief Analyst Marin. Daniel studied the projection. That seems optimistic. Varessa stood behind him with her arms crossed. She had changed into a lighter uniform, but the embarrassment of the arena still clung to her like smoke. Show me the first movement. Daniel lifted his hand and gently turned his wrist. You committed your weight before your strike. My technique is perfect. That was the problem. Varessa's long ears angled backward. Explain. Perfect techniques are easy to recognize. Once recognized, they become predictable. Several officers exchanged glances. Imperial combat doctrine was built on perfected repetition, with soldiers trained by neural simulations until every motion matched official models. Daniel's words sounded almost insulting. Worse, they made sense. The AI replayed Varessa's attack again and traced Daniel's response. A second AI attempted to classify it, failed, and requested permission to blame corrupted data. Denied, Serelya said as she entered the chamber. The Queen moved toward Daniel while two floating guards followed at her shoulders. Your mentor, Elias Ward. Where is he now? Daniel's humor faded. I don't know. He disappeared 9 years ago. Disappeared? Varessa asked. He left our colony during a dust storm. No ship launch, no transport record, no body. Serelya opened a sealed holographic file. An image appeared of a ruined stone temple on a world abandoned before humanity entered interstellar space. Carved into its wall was the exact shape of Daniel's final stance. Varessa stepped closer, fascination replacing wounded pride. That structure is over 40,000 years old. Daniel stared at the image. For the first time since entering the arena, he looked genuinely unsettled. Elias had that symbol on his walking stick. The room fell silent again. Then the combat AI spoke in a cheerful artificial voice. Conclusion: the logistics soldier may represent an unknown military threat. Daniel sighed. I knew fixing that coffee machine would come back to haunt me. By the following morning, Daniel's name had spread through the palace faster than an electrical fire in an oxygen garden. Servants whispered about him in corridors. Junior officers invented increasingly impossible versions of the match, and one palace cook claimed Daniel had defeated Varessa without touching her at all. By breakfast, the story included invisible human gravity, forbidden psychic powers, and a secret second skeleton. Daniel learned this while standing in the military dining hall with a tray of gray nutrient paste. For the record, he told the soldiers watching him from 3 tables away, I have only one skeleton, and it is already overworked. Nobody laughed. They merely leaned closer. A young alien corporal with 4 golden eyes whispered, That is exactly what a man with 2 skeletons would say. Daniel carried his tray to the farthest table and sat alone. He had taken only 1 bite when Varessa placed herself opposite him. Without her ceremonial armor, she appeared less like an imperial weapon, and more like a woman who had not slept, because a single unanswered question had been pacing through her mind all night. Her long ears rose through her dark braided hair, and the bruise beneath her jaw had already faded under a thin medical field. You are going to train me, she said. Daniel looked at his breakfast. Good morning to you too. I have reviewed the fight 312 times. That sounds unhealthy. In 63 reconstructions, I killed you. Then congratulations, you have had a productive night. Varessa pushed his tray aside. Show me how you moved. Daniel retrieved the tray. After I eat. You are delaying. I am defending lunch. It is the oldest human combat tradition. 2 hours later, they stood inside a restricted training chamber beneath the Western Palace Tower. The room was a silver cylinder lined with gravity emitters, kinetic sensors, and adaptive holographic walls capable of recreating any battlefield in the known empire. Varessa selected a simulation of the volcanic plains of Karos, where rivers of glowing metal flowed beneath a black sky. Daniel looked around at the projected eruptions. Could we begin somewhere less dramatic? You defeated me before half the Empire. Yes, but the floor was not actively trying to become lava. Varessa activated 3 combat drones. Their metallic bodies unfolded from the ceiling, each carrying padded shock blades and predictive targeting systems. These machines adjust to every known style. That sounds expensive. Attack, Daniel sighed. The first drone lunged. He moved slightly aside, redirected its wrist joint, and sent it spinning into the second. The third descended behind him, but Daniel ducked before its sensors registered his decision. He caught its support arm, twisted, and used the machine's stabilizer to throw it across the chamber. All 3 drones struck the wall within 6 seconds. One emitted a sorrowful error tone. Varessa stared at the wreckage. You anticipated them. No. They announced everything. They did not speak. Movement speaks. Varessa narrowed her eyes. That sounds like something printed on a cheap meditation poster. Elias said the same thing. Then he charged me for the lesson. She stepped onto the mat. Teach me. Daniel studied her stance. It was flawless by imperial standards, balanced, powerful, and supported by years of conditioned instinct. Relax your shoulders. They are relaxed. They appear prepared to invade a neighboring planet. Her ears tilted backward, but she obeyed. Daniel circled her slowly, correcting the angle of her feet and the position of her hands. Varessa hated every adjustment. Her muscles had been trained by neural repetition until each movement felt sacred. Daniel treated those movements as habits that needed breaking. Again, he said. She struck. He avoided the blow and tapped her forehead. Again! She kicked. He shifted and she stumbled past him. Again! On the 9th attempt, Varessa stopped herself before committing fully. Daniel smiled. Better. She looked suspicious. You are mocking me. Not yet. Improvement deserves respect. They continued for hours. Varessa learned that strength could become an anchor, speed could become noise, and confidence could become a signal visible before the body moved. Daniel never defeated her the same way twice. Sometimes he redirected her. Sometimes he simply stepped where she did not expect. Once he handed her a training baton while she was attacking, and she accepted it by reflex, before realizing she had lost control of the exchange. That was insulting, she said. It was educational. I nearly thanked you. That was the advanced lesson. Behind the observation glass, Queen Serelya watched with Chief Analyst Meron. Holographic symbols scrolled across the screen as the palace AI compared Daniel's movements with fragments recovered from ancient ruins. The match percentage rose steadily from uncertain to undeniable. 4 separate archaeological records, Meron whispered, all older than human spaceflight. Serelya enlarged one image, a faded mural showing figures standing in the same relaxed posture Daniel had just demonstrated. Around them, armies lowered their weapons. Do not tell Varessa yet, the Queen said. She is finally enjoying being confused. Inside the chamber, Daniel paused as the lights flickered. For one brief instant, the volcanic simulation vanished. A different landscape appeared, an endless white plain beneath a dark star, with a solitary figure holding a wooden staff. Daniel went still. The image disappeared before Varessa could turn. What is it? She asked. Daniel stared at the empty air. Nothing. But the voice that had whispered through the chamber belonged to a man he had not heard in 9 years. You are being watched, Daniel. The training system announced that no external transmission had occurred. Varessa raised an eyebrow. Still nothing. Daniel looked toward the observation glass, though he knew the voice had not come from there. Apparently, he said quietly. My old teacher has terrible timing. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat beside the narrow window of his assigned quarters, watching cargo ships drift between the palace towers while the capital's artificial moons moved in perfect silence above the city. Every few minutes, he replayed the voice from the training chamber in his mind. Elias had always spoken softly, as if loud words were a waste of energy. Even when Daniel was 16 and had accidentally broken his mentor's only water purifier, Elias had merely stared at the leaking machine and said, "An impressive victory over plumbing." The memory should have comforted him. Instead, it made the impossible transmission feel real. At dawn, Varessa entered without knocking. "You look terrible," she said. "Thank you." It was not praise. "Then your diplomatic training is improving." She placed a small black device on the table. It unfolded into a holographic map displaying a dead star system far beyond the imperial frontier. At its center floated a single moon, marked with the same ancient symbol from Elias's staff. "The signal did not enter the training chamber from outside," Varessa said. "It came through the palace archive network. Someone activated a 40,000-year-old navigation code." Daniel stared at the moon. "And you found where it points. The abandoned station of Ortheon. That sounds friendly. It has no atmosphere, no power, and no recorded visitors in 6 centuries. Very friendly." Queen Serelya had already prepared a small expedition vessel by the time they reached the royal hangar. The ship was narrow, fast, and equipped with a fold drive powerful enough to bend local space around its hull. Chief Analyst Marin waited near the boarding ramp beside 3 floating archive drones and an expression of permanent worry. "Your Majesty has ordered us to investigate discreetly," he said. Behind him, 40 palace guards loaded weapons, scanners, emergency shelters, and enough ammunition to conquer a minor asteroid. Daniel watched them pass. "Discreetly." Marin lowered his voice. "This is the reduced team. Their jump to Ortheon lasted less than an hour, though the distorted stars outside the windows made Daniel feel as if the ship had passed through the inside of a dream. Varessa spent most of the journey studying old combat recordings. She had begun practicing Daniel's relaxed stance, but the result looked less relaxed than threateningly patient. "Your shoulders are still tense," he told her. "I am sitting. You are sitting aggressively. Humans criticize everything, only when awake." When the ship emerged from folded space, Ortheon appeared beneath them, a gray moon circling a pale, dying star. The abandoned station hung above its surface like a broken crown, its vast rings split open and dark. No beacon responded to their approach. No heat signatures appeared on the scanners. Yet as the ship drew near, ancient lights flickered along the station's hull one after another, guiding them toward an intact docking bay. Marin swallowed audibly. That station should not possess power. The ship's navigation AI answered in a cheerful voice. "Correction. The station does possess power. Where is it coming from? Unknown. That is not helpful. I am designed for accuracy, not emotional support." The docking clamps engaged before the pilot touched the controls. Varessa rose and drew a compact plasma blade. Daniel took a simple metal staff from the emergency rack. "That is a maintenance tool," Marin said. "Then I will maintain order." The station's interior was cold and nearly weightless. Their magnetic boots struck the floor with hollow clicks as they moved through corridors lined with carvings of unfamiliar star systems. Some symbols glowed when Daniel passed, responding to him with pale, golden light. Varessa noticed. "It recognizes you." "That is not comforting." "You say that often." "The galaxy gives me many opportunities." They reached a circular chamber wider than the palace arena. At its center stood a stone arch surrounded by floating fragments of crystal. When Daniel entered, the crystals spun together, projecting figures made of light. Warriors from dozens of species appeared around them, each practicing movements similar to those Elias had taught him. They fought without armor, without energy weapons, and without touching their opponents. Every strike ended before impact, yet holographic armies collapsed around them, as if defeated by their own momentum. Marin's archive drones began recording furiously. "These are the Keepers," he whispered. "The civilization that ended the Seven-System War. Historians believed they were a myth." A final hologram formed beneath the arch. Elias Ward appeared exactly as Daniel remembered him. Gray-haired, thin, leaning on his wooden staff with an expression of patient disappointment. Daniel forgot to breathe. "Hello, boy," the recording said. "You took longer than expected." Varessa looked from the hologram to Daniel. "Your mysterious master insults you from beyond time." "That is definitely him." Elias's image turned toward Varessa. "And you must be the champion who attacks before thinking." Her long ears stiffened. "I dislike this recording." "It appears to know you," Daniel said. "I dislike it more." Elias raised his staff, and the chamber doors sealed behind them. Far beneath the station, dormant machines began to awaken. Red lights spread across the walls as a deep mechanical voice announced that an unauthorized fleet had entered the system. The hologram's expression became grave. "You were not the only one searching for this place," Elias said. "And the others did not come to learn." The first enemy ships appeared beyond Orthion's shattered rings as thin black shapes against the dying star. Then the station's sensors multiplied them into a formation of 37 vessels, each wrapped in distortion fields that bent light around their hulls. Varessa studied the tactical projection while red warning symbols spread across the chamber. "Those are Varkesh warships," she said. "Their commander collects forbidden weapons and the people who know how to use them." Daniel looked at Elias's hologram. "I assume you invited him too." "I left invitations only for those capable of surviving the journey," Elias replied. "That is not the reassuring answer you think it is." Chief Analyst Marin hurried between the floating crystals, trying to connect his archive drones to the station's defense network. The ancient systems rejected every command with polite musical tones. "It will not recognize Imperial authorization," he said. "Apparently, 40,000 years ago, our security clearance was considered insufficient." "To be fair," Daniel said, "we had not invented paperwork yet." A transmission forced itself across every screen. The image of General Karvek appeared above the chamber floor, broad-shouldered and wrapped in dark cybernetic armor. Half his face had been replaced by a polished mask containing 3 red mechanical eyes. "Commander Varessa," he said. "I expected the Queen's champion. I did not expect the human embarrassment standing beside her." Varessa's hand tightened around her plasma blade. Daniel leaned toward her. "He is trying to provoke you." "I know. Your ears are doing the angry thing." "My ears do not have an angry thing. They are nearly horizontal." Karvek continued. "Surrender the station, the archive, and the human. In return, I may permit the rest of you to leave." Marin whispered. "He said may." "Very generous," Daniel replied. Varessa stepped toward the projection. "You brought 37 warships to capture 1 logistics soldier." Karvek's mechanical eyes narrowed. "The galaxy has seen the arena recording. Every mercenary warlord and desperate ruler now wants the secret inside his mind." Daniel sighed. "I knew I should have lost more convincingly." The transmission ended as the first plasma barrage struck the station. The chamber lurched. Ancient shields flashed into existence around Orthion, absorbing most of the impact, but several outer sections ruptured. Through the walls came the distant groan of metal awakening after centuries of silence. Elias's hologram lifted his staff. "The station cannot defend itself indefinitely. The Keepers designed it as a school, not a fortress." "Then teach us something useful," Varessa said. "You still believe learning is the collection of techniques." At this moment, I would happily collect a technique capable of destroying 37 ships. That belief destroyed the keepers. The floor opened before them, revealing a spiral passage descending into pale light. Elias's image moved toward it. The enemy seeks the core archive. If Karvek reaches it, he will gain access to predictive combat engines capable of studying entire civilizations. Daniel followed reluctantly. And what happens if we reach it first? You may learn why I disappeared. Varessa glanced at Daniel, but he did not answer. They descended while Imperial guards secured the upper levels. The deeper corridors contained no dust and no decay. Walls shifted around them, forming bridges over enormous chambers where dormant machines floated in artificial gravity. Some resembled training drones. Others were too large to have ever fought individuals. Marin stared down at one metallic structure shaped like a coiled serpent. Is that a weapon? The station AI answered through the walls. Educational instrument. What does it teach? Consequences. Marin moved away from the railing. Enemy boarding pods struck the station before they reached the archive. Varkesh soldiers poured into the corridors wearing adaptive armor and neural prediction visors. Varessa met the first squad at a narrow bridge. Her old instincts urged her forward, but she remembered Daniel's lessons and waited. The leading soldier attacked with a vibrating blade. She shifted rather than blocked, guided his arm past her and sent him crashing into two companions. Daniel disabled another with the metal staff, striking joints, weapon locks, and balance points faster than the visor could calculate. Its display began predicting movements that never occurred. Their systems are reading us, Varessa said. Then give them bad information. She smiled. Together they changed rhythm constantly. Varessa attacked with disciplined power, Daniel with quiet redirection, each interrupting the pattern the enemy expected. At one point, Daniel tossed her the staff without warning. She caught it, swept 3 soldiers from their feet, and threw it back. You accepted it again, he said. This time I meant to. Advanced progress. They reached the core archive as explosions shook the lower structure. The chamber contained no computers, only a black sphere suspended above a mirror-like floor. Elias stood beside it, no longer flickering like a recording. Daniel stopped. The old man's eyes moved toward him with unmistakable recognition. You are alive, Daniel whispered. Not in the way you hope. The sphere opened like an eye, revealing thousands of stored minds turning within its light. Elias placed one transparent hand against its surface. The keepers did not vanish, he said. They imprisoned themselves here after realizing their combat engine had begun predicting not only battles, but rebellions, governments, and extinction. Behind them, the sealed doors began to bend under heavy impacts. Karvek's voice echoed through the chamber. Open the archive. Elias looked at Daniel. He believes it will teach him how to win every war. Daniel tightened his grip on the staff. And will it? Yes, Elias said. That is why you must destroy it. The doors of the core archive bowed inward with each strike from Karvek's soldiers, their ancient metal glowing red along the edges. Daniel stood before the black sphere while thousands of stored minds moved beneath its surface like stars trapped in deep water. Elias's transparent form flickered beside him, no longer entirely human and not quite a machine. Destroy it how? Daniel asked. The station was designed to survive collapsing suns. The archive is not protected from its own conclusions, Elias said. Force it to predict something it cannot understand. Varessa glanced at the bending doors. That explanation would be more useful if we had several days and fewer armed visitors. Marin's drones circled the sphere, scanning desperately. The archive processes probability through conflict patterns. Every war, every duel, every rebellion becomes a sequence. Daniel understood before the analyst finished. Then we behave without a sequence. Precisely, Elias said. Unpredictability is not randomness. It is choice without obedience to habit. The doors split open. Karvek entered through the smoke, wearing heavy assault armor, followed by cybernetic soldiers whose prediction visors glowed with crimson symbols. A weapon cannon unfolded over his shoulder and locked onto Daniel. "Step away from the sphere," he ordered. Daniel looked at Varessa. "Do you have a plan?" "Yes." "Is it a good plan?" "No." "Excellent. The archive may never recover." Karvek fired. Varessa moved first, striking the cannon aside with her plasma blade while Daniel rolled beneath the blast. The beam tore across the chamber and vanished into the mirrored floor, which rippled like liquid before throwing the energy upward into the ceiling. Maron screamed, then quickly corrected himself. That was a tactical warning sound. Combat erupted around the sphere. The Varkesh soldiers moved with impossible coordination, their neural visors reading muscle tension and projecting attacks before they occurred. Varessa's first strike was intercepted. Daniel's staff was trapped between two powered gauntlets. Every familiar response opened a predicted counter. "They adapted," Varessa said, twisting away from a blade. "Then stop being yourself," Daniel replied. She stared at him. "That may be the rudest advice you have ever given. Try fighting badly." Varessa deliberately stumbled. The soldier before her hesitated as its visor flooded with conflicting predictions. She crashed shoulder first into him, grabbed his arm, and sent them both spinning across the floor. "I hate this method," she said while rising. "You look natural." Daniel abandoned every clean movement Elias had taught him. He dropped the staff, kicked it behind himself, caught it with the opposite hand, and struck an attacker he was not looking at. Then he ducked for no reason, causing two predicted shots to pass over him and hit each other's weapons. The enemy systems began flashing error codes. Karvek roared and charged Varessa personally. His mechanical limbs gave him enormous speed, but she did not meet him with strength. She stepped aside, slapped the side of his helmet with an open hand, and continued walking. Karvek stopped in disbelief. "Did you just strike me improperly?" "I am experimenting." He swung at her. She bent backward, seized a loose cable from his armor, and tied it around his cannon mount. The weapon attempted to rotate, dragging his own arm across his chest. Varessa laughed, despite herself. "Daniel, I understand why you enjoy this. I enjoy surviving. The comedy is accidental." Around them, the black sphere brightened. The archive was processing their broken rhythms, generating millions of possible outcomes and discarding them almost instantly. Voices filled the chamber, overlapping in forgotten languages. The stored keepers searched for a pattern and found only decisions changing from one heartbeat to the next. Elias raised his transparent staff. "Continue. It is losing coherence." Karvek tore the cable free and activated a field that froze the air around Varessa into a shimmering cage. He seized Daniel by the throat and lifted him from the floor. "You are not a master," the warlord snarled. "You are a frightened soldier hiding behind tricks." Daniel struggled for breath. "That is, most soldiers." Karvek tightened his grip. "The archive will show me every victory." "No," Daniel whispered. "It will show you every fear." He stopped resisting. The sudden surrender disrupted Karvek's predictive implant for half a second. Varessa drove her shoulder through the failing cage, struck the release node beneath Karvek's arm, and disabled his powered gauntlet. Daniel dropped, swept the warlord's leg, and used his falling weight to hurl him against the sphere. The archive opened around Karvek like a pupil. Thousands of possible futures flooded directly into his implants. Empires burning, loyal soldiers betraying him, victories creating larger wars, enemies born from every conquest. Karvek screamed as his mind tried to follow them all. "It cannot decide which future is true," Maron shouted. "None of them are," Daniel said. "That is the point." The sphere cracked. Light poured through the chamber as the stored minds began releasing themselves from the machine. Elias's form became brighter, younger, and peaceful. Daniel stepped toward him. "Come with us. I have been part of this archive too long." "You left without saying goodbye," I believe distance would protect you. Daniel's expression hardened. That was a poor prediction. Elias smiled. Then you have learned the final lesson. Varessa reached Daniel as the chamber began collapsing. The ancient station announced structural failure in a calm, almost pleased voice. Marin looked upward. Why does it sound happy? Educational instrument, Daniel said. We are learning consequences. Elias lifted one hand in farewell as the sphere shattered behind him. Go, Daniel. Teach them what the keepers forgot. Varessa pulled Daniel toward the passage, while emergency bridges unfolded through the station. Behind them, Karvek lay unconscious, his army's predictive network dead. Ahead, Orthion's remaining ships transmitted a warning that the dying star had become unstable. Daniel ran beside Varessa as gravity failed, and the corridor tilted toward open space. Next time you choose a warm-up opponent, he said. Choose someone ordinary. Varessa caught his arm as they leaped across the widening gap. I did. The Imperial expedition escaped Orthion less than 3 minutes before the station folded inward upon itself. From the observation deck, Daniel watched its broken rings collapse into a sphere of white light, then vanish without explosion or debris, as though the ancient school had simply closed its doors after its final lesson. Elias disappeared with it. Daniel stood in silence until Varessa joined him beside the glass. Her armor was scorched, one sleeve was torn, and her long ears drooped with exhaustion. He saved your life, she said. He also ruined several years of it. Mentors appear talented at both. Daniel almost smiled. Below them, Karvek lay restrained inside a medical field, while his surviving soldiers surrendered across the system. The warlord had awakened twice, spoken about 1,000 futures in the same breath, and demanded that someone turn off tomorrow. Marin considered this scientifically fascinating. Everyone else considered it an excellent reason to keep the sedation active. When the expedition returned to Lithara, the capital welcomed them beneath skies crowded with ceremonial starfighters and floating banners. Queen Serelya received them in the grand arena, where the same crowd that had once laughed at Daniel now rose in thunderous applause. He stopped at the entrance, visibly uncomfortable. I preferred it, when they expected me to lose, he muttered. Varessa glanced at him. You complained then, too. Consistency is one of my strengths. The Queen stepped onto the combat platform wearing a silver crown surrounded by tiny orbiting lights. Behind her, holograms displayed fragments recovered from Orthion, the history of the Keepers, the danger of predictive warfare, and the final destruction of the archive. Serelya spoke not of conquest, but of restraint. She announced that Karvek would stand trial before a council of the worlds he had attacked, while his soldiers would be offered rehabilitation rather than execution. Several generals disliked the decision. Varessa silenced them with a single look, although Daniel quietly reminded her that intimidating people was not technically conflict resolution. It is conflict reduction, she replied. The Queen then turned toward him. Daniel Hale, step forward. He obeyed with the expression of a man approaching an unexpected tax inspection. Your actions saved this empire from a weapon capable of controlling every war before it began, Serelya said. Name the reward you desire. Daniel considered the nobles, soldiers, and cameras watching him. Months earlier, he would have asked to return to the logistics wing and disappear behind stacks of power cells. Now he understood that hiding what Elias had taught him would only allow someone more dangerous to rediscover it. Build a school, he said. The arena quieted. Not a military academy. A place where warriors learn when not to fight, where species exchange methods instead of weapons, and where no training system teaches that perfection is the same as wisdom. Serelya smiled. And who will lead this school? Daniel looked immediately at Varessa. She stared back in alarm. Do not involve me in your punishment. You are the Empire's greatest champion. You defeated me in 47 seconds, which proves you still have room to improve. Laughter spread through the arena. Varessa's ears angled sharply backward, but a reluctant smile appeared. Only if you teach beside me. Daniel sighed. I should have asked for a quiet office. 1 year later, the Hall of the Open Hand stood where the old tournament barracks had once been. Its training chambers used shifting gravity, holographic battlefields, and deliberately unreliable combat drones that occasionally surrendered before matches began. Students arrived from 32 worlds, armored giants, telepathic diplomats, former mercenaries, and several nobles, whose greatest previous conflict had involved dinner seating. Varessa taught discipline, courage, and control. Daniel taught balance, improvisation, and the importance of never trusting a machine that claimed to predict everything. Meron managed the archives and had finally repaired the palace AI's habit of labeling Daniel a military threat. It now called him an educational concern. Queen Serelya visited often, usually when royal meetings became unbearable. On the anniversary of the famous match, she ordered the arena reopened for a demonstration. Varessa and Daniel stepped onto the platform before thousands of students. A warm-up? She asked. Daniel removed his jacket and folded it at the edge. Are you certain? This time, I have trained. The signal sounded. Varessa did not rush. Daniel did not retreat. They circled each other slowly, reading weight, breath, hesitation, and intent. Then Varessa smiled and lowered her hands. Daniel did the same. The audience waited in confusion. What are they doing? A student whispered. Serelya leaned back in her throne. Winning, she said. After exactly 47 seconds, Varessa offered Daniel her hand. He accepted it, and the arena erupted into laughter and applause. The first fight between them had ended in less than a minute because one warrior knew how to defeat another. The last ended the same way because both had learned there was nothing left to prove.